us a muscle car.
It's a 73 Roadrunner.
It's rusty as hell.
It's the off-road runner.
This is terrible.
What do you mean? It's perfect. Check this out. We're putting 40s on it.
That's awesome.
You think they'll fit?
No, not a chance.
Nah, it'll be fine.
I like it. Dookie brown paint, biscuit tuck interior, white doors with the red seats. Was that like an option that you asked for?
Dude, this thing was a lady killer back in '74.
Some Mopar freak's gonna hunt us down for cutting this thing up.
Because the engine and transmission are so heavy, we want to load the engine and transmission from the bottom, because trying to bring it over and down in through the top is going to be really difficult. It's kind of the ugly Roadrunner, but I think it's turning into something really cool. I like the long nose of it. We're making room for that big engine. We're not doing what a lot of TRAR builders do, where they just drop it on a truck chassis. Like, doing all this work to put a suspension under it is a lot more work than just dropping it on a K5 Blazer chassis.
And we don't want it to sit super tall like most of those TRARs. We want this thing kind of down in the nose, and we got to make sure the frame is tucked up pretty high.
This was the old frame rail. It kicked up here, but it was too narrow. Our new substructure is all running up through here. They've cut and pipe shaped these and brought it all up. So now it all kicks up.
So now we've got the 3x3 188 wall frame rail running all the way from the rear leaf spring perches all the way up to the front frame horns. And then this tube here is actually tied into the roll cage. Essentially what we're going to end up with here is a frame rail that is almost 9 inches tall. So it's going to have a ton of rigidity.
We got our Allison 1000 from ATS. This is a 6-speed Allison transmission. It has an SAE 3 bell housing, so it's basically the transmission out of a Chevy Duramax truck, but you have to put a different bell housing on the front to bolt it up to the Cummins. So now we've taken the Cummins, bolted it to the Allison. The engine probably weighs 600 or 700 pounds, and the transmission is probably about 300 or 400 pounds. So we have 1,000 pounds of engine and tranny right here that we got to get underneath the Roadrunner, and then we're going to drop the whole body down onto it, figure out exactly where we want it to sit, and probably start cutting out the floor so that it all tucks up in the frame rails.
I'll let you know, right there.
We just got the Cummins in. Dave built these super bitchin' bad dude motor mounts. They mount to the engine, they come off here, and these 3 big bolts bolt the motor mount to the frame. We have an axle, a big Dana 60 that needs to live in this area somewhere. We have this low-hanging oil cooler and coolant return line. All this stuff is kind of, wants to live the same place our axle does. Our build's going awesome. So under the hood, 5-liter Cummins V8 engine. Nobody puts these in muscle cars because nobody can get them yet. This engine's brand new. This is what's going to end up in the new Nissan Titan. It's got a Flexolite radiator up front, Mishimoto intercooler. We have Hydro Boost. We have full hydraulic steering. We have dual air shocks up front just because this engine's so heavy and because nobody runs dual air shocks. Got an air raid, air cleaner up top. Let's go inside and show you what's behind this Cummins. So behind that Cummins is an Allison 6-speed automatic transmission bolted up to an NP205 transfer case. We got lots of shifters here. There's actually the fill stick right there for the transmission, painless wiring harness. Here's where we run our full hydro steering. Got a couple Optimas back there. This is an electronically controlled transmission. We have a computerized diesel engine. There's a lot of wires going on underneath here to make everything talk to each other, but we needed all that stuff because we wanted to get all that torque to the tires. Driver and passenger are riding in these nice white vinyl Mastercraft seats, perfect for an old rusty car that you're gonna drive around out in the desert. 50 gallons of diesel fuel right behind us. Perfectly safe. In the back of this car, we have a lot of stuff that we're probably not going to use. We got 2 giant spare tires.
Which we won't need.
We're not going to need those. We got brake lights.
That aren't working.
We have license plate lights.
Dual that don't work.
We have a trailer hitch
that we're going to pull our jet skis with
when we go to the lake. And when you're building a tow rig like this, you need a big rear end. So it's got a Dynatrac 80 back here, some big Deaver leaf springs, some Fox shocks, and JE rail drive shafts.
Nailed it.
We won the zombie war. So that proves that this car is perfect for the end of the world. Well, most of the end of the world. The other thing that we're gonna run into when doomsday comes is tsunamis. Tsunamis are giant waves, and when giant waves come, what do?
High ground.
Let's go to high ground. You think they'll believe there's going to be tsunamis out in the desert?
Yeah.
Okay. As long as it's believable. Where we're going, we don't need roads. I'm pretty sure that the JK, the whole JK scene, the four-door Wrangler, that's almost done. I think everybody's going to be going to muscle cars now.
I know that I'm probably going to build one for the family because, you know, there's nothing like a nice big muscle car 4x4 car truck.
Exactly. What was that?
Boulders.
No concern.
So same engine, same block, same head, same footprint. So we didn't have to change any of the motor mounts. We didn't have to do any of that. The EGR system I was telling you about fits in the same footprint. You can see a crossover tube in the back here. And then you can see the EGR cooler tucks in behind the alternator. So again, we're not in the firewall, no firewall modifications.
We did modify the grill
Yeah.
to put an intercooler in there. Because remember when it went underwater, it just had a tube going over it. Now it actually has a charge air cooler.
We will still be able to run the stock cooling package, but like Fred said, we do have a charge air cooler.
Steve, is this engine a 4BT?
This engine is not a 4BT.
Everybody tells me the 4BT is the greatest Cummins engine ever made.
The 4BT is a great engine.
It is a great engine.
And it might be one of the greatest engines we've ever made, but it's not the best engine for this Jeep.
You think this is a better engine for
I think
this
this
Jeep?
is the best engine for this Jeep. This engine's 330 pounds lighter than a 4B.
330 pounds?
330 pounds, you heard it.
Wow.
You heard it here, you heard it first.
That would be
Yeah.
like me trying to lift Steve and Steve.
Or just a Steve.
Or just Steve. So what we're doing is we're hooking up wires to the engine. We built it as a submarine once. It's actually a lot easier than building it to drive on the street because there's a lot more sensors you got to hook up, a lot more plumbing you want to do, power steering's back in, the intercooler, all of that electrical, the heater's hooked up. We're gonna put the cage back in. This is the type of stuff I could do all day. Back up and move the front end over. You got that, Steve? You're good. Keep going, keep going. Keep it hard, passenger, and keep going. Keep going. It's gonna start coming down now. I don't think we got over 800 RPM in the diesel. Just check, 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 check. Low gears with the Atlas, 538s, turn on our air lockers. This is fun wheeling, and that diesel is a fun engine for it because it's slow, technical stuff. This isn't rock bouncing where you're bouncing over stuff. It's not running hot. See, the type of guy that would keep his 4-liter would make bad decisions. Kind of like what Mike's doing right now. Making a really bad decision. What are you doing, Mike? It just needs to grab right here. Or I can stack a rock. Hold it right there. Little go. You're gonna turn slightly passenger and reverse simultaneously. Wasn't enough. We are back at the same fuel pump we started at this morning. We've put in about roughly 90, 95 miles, and now we're checking the fuel mileage to see how each Jeep did. We had a little bit of issues with the Jeep, with the Cummins, mostly because we crushed the oil pan, which is probably my fault because I ran into a rock and wasn't paying attention. So now we're gonna check what type of fuel numbers we've gotten. Everybody ran it to one click. Let's start with the 4-liter. How many gallons?
7.28.
7.28 gallons. 6.53 with the V8. Come and see, what do you got?
5.33 gallons
5.33 gallons.
with a brand new engine. The first 95 miles on the engine.
5, 6, 7. We definitely get better fuel economy with a 4-cylinder Cummins diesel. Right now, the price of diesel fuel is cheaper, so we're actually saving even more money. I had a lot of fun driving tube sock. I think we all had a lot of fun four-wheeling today. Doesn't really matter what engine you put in your Jeep, you're gonna go have fun in your Jeep four-wheeling with your buddies. Steve doesn't want to hear that. He wants to only put a Cummins engine in, and I think it's a great option.
It's not for everybody, it's just the coolest people.
Yeah. This truck was 2-wheel drive. We're gonna make it 4-wheel drive. We're running a really big axle because we have a big Cummins diesel. We are at about 9 days before we need to leave, and we have a huge list of stuff to do. And that doesn't even count the things we have forgotten about and haven't gotten on the list yet. And somewhere in that 9 days, we have 2 days of taking the truck to get painted. So we're really hustling right now to get it done. Let me show you a few things that we've been doing. We built a custom bumper for the front. We wanted a bumper that would kind of suck up tight in the front of the truck. It's a really big truck, so any real estate that we can do to keep the thing smaller, it'll help it better on the trail, help it get through obstacles. This is gonna be there's a winch that'll mount right there. It's actually a Warren Xeon 12,000. The frame on these Dodge trucks is actually C-channel the whole way. We went through and boxed the entire frame, added new shock towers, bump stop mounts. The whole front end is getting a 3-link suspension with Fox coilover shocks. We're using custom builder parts from BDS Suspension. So underneath here, you can see some of the things we've done to the truck. Starting in the front, the Cummins diesel, we used an Advanced Adapters bell housing. Behind that, we have an ATS NV4500. It's a pretty common, pretty tough transmission. ATS goes through and beefs up a lot of things, and it's a 5-speed, has an overdrive. Behind that is the Off-Road Designs Magnum 205. It's basically a reduction box in front of a 205 transfer case, and the 205 is a Ford style, so it has the front output on the driver's side. Between the transfer case and our big Dynatrac axles, there'll be some Tom Woods drive shafts. The rear is going to have 1410s at both ends. The front's going to have a 1410 at one end and a 1350 CV up at the transfer case. Along here is our Banks exhaust, big 4-inch exhaust that runs through the back here. You can notice how we boxed in the whole frame. This has made this truck a lot more rigid. When we first got here and we were working on the suspension, the whole truck would twist and pop, and the body was twisting all over the place because the frame was only C-channel. Now it's really stiff and solid. We built our rock sliders off of the frame. We've also added more cross members all the way back through the truck and big cross members going forward. So the frame has gotten a lot more stiff, which is good. You want your suspension to do all your flexing instead of your frame. It's all coming together. We've been busting tail on it, and I really think that it's gonna be a cool truck to drive. Really simple. It's probably gonna be loud. The interior is pretty barren. So in here is where I'm gonna be spending the week. We have all our steering from PSC. We added a clutch and brake pedal because this truck originally had an automatic. So we pulled that out. We had to track down some parts from a junkyard. We had to rebuild the whole transmission tunnel because the transmission has been brought up a little. There's also a transfer case in here now, which wasn't because it was a 2-wheel drive truck. The cage is all getting mounted to the cab, and the seats are getting mounted to the cage. A lot of times you'll want to tie your cage directly to the frame, but on this truck we decided let's tie it to the cab, have the cab, cage, and seats all as one unit. What that does is it helps segregate the vibration and the noise that Cummins is going to make. Tuffy center console right here, big cooler somewhere. We got a lot to do. We're running out of time. We got to get back to work. It's a pretty basic, simple truck. We got a Cummins diesel, manual transmission, 205 gear-driven transfer case, big axles, big locking differentials, All of it running out to these 40-inch Nitto tires on Method beadlock wheels. We have not had a flat Nitto tire on any Ultimate Adventure yet, and I'm pretty sure we're not gonna get one this year. So how long ago did you build this thing?
I started probably about 2006. We used to do mud bogging a lot. We do tug of war. It's kind of a multi-purpose vehicle.
So what does it actually need to be mud bogging by the day after tomorrow?
That transmission right there.
Stuffed in
there.
Okay.
A couple of batteries, maybe some fuel filter and oil filter.
Basically a tune-up. The thing's been sitting for
3 years.
What do you think, Donnie?
Well, Fred, it's got all the hardware. One piece is broken, which would have to be swapped out, but everything we need to have a good time is here. What about you? What are your thoughts?
I love it. It's ugly enough that we will still look good standing next to it.
Correct.
My theory.
Which is a major positive.
I think we like this truck, but we gotta go look at another one at least.
Sounds good.
The transmission is unbolted. We'll lower it down, but then we have to somehow get it out from under the suspension links. Then we just have to do everything in reverse. Put the new one back in, go mud wump it.
That went pretty well.
Yeah. Nobody got hurt so far. So the old transmission wasn't working, and luckily Lee had a new used transmission sitting here, so we pulled it out, swapped his performance valve body into it, swapped his performance torque converter into it, and we will now bolt this in. It's from a newer truck, but everything should work, plug back together, and we'll have a mud truck. All right, we have the transmission and transfer case back in. We have to make the little shaft that goes between the transfer case and the secondary transfer case because we're replacing the U-joint in that. Now we gotta hook it all back up. Then we have to put the cross member in, hook up the coolant lines, hook up all the shifters, and hopefully the transmission that Lee had sitting here will work.
The new slip yoke for the new transmission is like 1 inch longer. We're gonna chop it like 1 inch off.
Like they did on the old one.
Yeah, exactly, just like they did on the old one.
So that it goes back in.
What's the term you guys use for getting red? If we were like really getting it, what should we yell?
Super wumping?
We're really wumping now. We just want to be cool.
Yeah, we don't want the other mud wumpers to laugh at us.
Well, that's inevitable.
That's a good sign. Dave, take the vent hose off the front axle.
I got this.
Perfect. That looks like it'll work. All right, so this is the vent hose off the front axle. We're gonna see if we can use this to pick up fuel out of the tank and run the fuel pump. It's getting it. Barely. All right, do it again. Come on.
Oh, it's there. At least there's fuel in it now.
Do it again. Ah.
Get in.
Let me get my tools.
Let's see what it does.
It's fixed. It's gonna be great.
All right.
Keep it running.
This is it, Dave. We gotta get through this hole, and we are mud boggers.
Keep it running, keep it running. Come on, mud truck.
Oh, it's pooping out.
No, it's not. It's good.